advanced is open for interpretation. It just doesn't mean they're putting spaceships into low Earth orbit, But again, I think a large portion of the craft that we see are of our own building and design that we could have, extrapolated off of crashed vehicles. But at the end of the day, I don't think they want people to know that it's our technology that we've had for, over half a decade. I think it's just easier to say, well, it's aliens. So, we don't know. They're doing their own thing. You look at some of these places in Europe and it's like, oh, that pub over there. How old is that pub? Oh, it's like 400 or 500 years old. That's just not something that we can comprehend, even here in the States, something that's 400 or 500 years old. But there's a strong belief that when you look back at the course of human history, fairies, goblins, any supernatural creatures you want to wrap your head around, that was, in fact, non-human entities. Mm-hmm. And they chose that particular form so that it wouldn't create that, to your point, that ontological shock.
Greetings, humans. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Ryan Barthel, director of podcasts for Matt Beall's podcast, formerly known as Limitless Podcast, and the Matt Beall Legacy Podcast, which focuses more on the legacy of the company, Beall's, and the employees who work there and the culture, which is really cool. He's got more than 14 years experience at Beall's under his belt, from loss prevention and HR systems to now running the full production side of two wildly different shows. He's the unsung hero, turning raw cosmic conversations into the polished episodes fans can't stop talking about. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what it's really like working with Matt and on the show, the wild subjects the show tackles, and Ryan's own take on some of the biggest mysteries out there. Ryan, thank you so much for joining the Multiverse. I'm really excited to have you here, and so is Megan.
Yeah, Dave, Megan, thanks for having me on. I'm glad that we were able to logistically get it to work, and I'm finally able to join.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes. I've been slowly harassing Ryan for several months, trying to find a time where we can work this out. He's a busy man, though. He's got a lot going on. And so we're just grateful he took some time on his vacation to visit the Multiverse. So first off, how's the vacation going? Going well?
Vacation's going good. Transparently, the fiance and I are Disney adults, which,
nice.
You always hear the negative side of that. Look, there's some negative people that go to Disney and take it a little bit too much. But for us, it's an opportunity to escape, right? Just kind of check out reality for a little bit, go be a kid again, and then spend all of our money, as the wall behind me, the Lego, and then the lightsabers that we built there that you can't see. So, but beyond that, went up there, went to a Ash Nico concert. If you ask me who that is, I can't tell you, but Brianna loves him. So we went and saw that at the beautiful Hard Rock there in Orlando. And then we're spending the next couple of days just kind of getting relaxed. And I've been somewhat successful in avoiding all the spoilers for the last season of The Boys. So I'm gonna finally able to get caught up this weekend.
It sounds like you got a nice chill weekend plan. You mentioned you guys are Disney Pass members. That actually makes it a lot cheaper, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. I mean, you pay a monthly amount, whatever, but we live an hour and a half away. So we're able to, go up there on a Saturday morning, come back Saturday evening, right? It's a long day, and we enjoy it, right? Whether it's riding the rides or doing anything else, it's a good time. They've definitely got us addicted, for lack of better terms.
You have to be a citizen of Florida to get that, or no?
I'm not entirely sure. I think anybody can become a pass holder. I do know that when you're a Florida resident, they do give you a little bit different discounts. So does Universal, does the same thing. But yeah, Disney, as long as your money's green, and even when it's not, Disney does not care. They'll take it.
Favorite Disney movie?
So that's a tough one, man, because
it's complicated.
It is everything in the Disney universe. So my number one, and I still watch it occasionally, and I loved it as a kid, and it's gonna, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. It's a goofy movie.
A goofy movie. I love that
Right?
movie. Yeah.
Right? So like when you see it in two different perspectives, right? When you're a kid, you're siding with Max and you're like, God, Dad, you're such a loser. You won't let me go do this or go do that. And then you grow up and you're like, yeah, Max was kind of an asshole. Like all his dad wanted to do was hang out with him and spend the summer with him, and he couldn't be bothered. So
yeah, he was a teenager trying to branch out and do his own thing, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Goofy was just, you know, trying to be a dad, trying to be a good dad.
Yeah.
My favorite Disney movie is the Black Cauldron. It's an older one, yeah, it's super old. I remember I rented it when I was a kid from like on beta as a from theater. Megan, you got a favorite Disney movie?
You know, that's a really hard one, but the first one that came to mind when you threw that question out there was Hercules, honestly.
Okay.
I love the Disney movie Hercules.
During the pandemic, when everything was just so crazy and you couldn't turn anything on or watch, you couldn't even watch a Netflix show without like people wearing masks on the show and stuff. We just went on this Disney binge where we watched almost every single Disney movie you could watch. So I appreciate Disney, right? It is a takeaway. It brings you back to being a kid. It like it gets you out of that serious, like I'm an adult and I got stuff to do mode. So that's cool that you guys do that.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the Black Cauldron and Hercules. So my fiance's got, it's in the closet over here, but just tubs upon tubs of old VHS movies.
Wow.
And then for Christmas, I went and bought her a VHS player, which good luck trying to find a cheap one online because it's 125 plus for a freaking VHS player now. But so we've been we've been going back through and watching VHS movies. Like I had to buy a special adapter to get it hooked up to the TV. And you realize like, oh my God, like some of these movies, you know, just, you're trying to watch it at the house and you're expecting 4K and all this. And it's a VHS tape. You have to adjust the tracking, but it does kind of trigger this childhood memory when you're putting the tape in there and it's like, which I did no justice to that sound, but we've been kind of going back to kind of where I started. We've been burning through all of her like Disney VHS movies and stuff like that. We won't touch the ones like Land Before Time because I'll cry like a person losing their damn mind because that movie is so sad. And then there's a couple of Mary-Kate and Ashley videos that we've watched kind of on repeat. So it was if you're asking me if it was a good gift, I think so. And we've been able to kind of step into the past a little bit, if you will, by going through that VHS player.
So now that we got Disney out of the way, I wanted to kick things off with a little bit about the most recent episode, which blew my mind. I've always kind of avoided the electric universe. I think it's because it really flips cosmology on its head and then dumps everything out. And then you got to kind of figure out where everything is. I mean, Dr. Michael Claridge was talking to you guys on the electric universe theory. And, you know, he's arguing that electricity and plasma, not gravity, are the real architects of galaxies, stars, and potentially life itself. I mean, that's a lot to take in, isn't it, Ryan?
It was, and you know, transparently, I didn't know much about the electric universe, right?
Until I watched.
I understood the concepts of you know, hey, space isn't empty or dead. You know, anything and everything is living and connected. And we had gotten so many subscriber comments about, you know, you got to talk electric universe, got to talk, you know, to Dr. Michael. And we got him on. And, you know, just first and foremost, outside of the recording, it's just a genuine, humble, excited, enthusiastic person to meet. Like we went to dinner and, you know, one of the biggest questions that I had, being the kind of self-described nerd that I am, is he talked about that there's these filaments, right? Electric filaments in between, going from the sun to the earth, earth to the moon, moon to the sun, like all these places are connected. And then if you zoom out, it's even galaxies are connected by these filaments. So, I'm sitting here hearing all of this, trying to understand and get up to speed. But my biggest question to him was, and he said it was, it's, look, things are possible. And then there's plausible, like, could it happen? Will it happen? But one of my biggest questions to him was, is could you develop a craft that can feed into these electric filaments in between galaxies, therefore enabling travel? And kind of the discussion that we had, and I'm a big analogy person, so I like to analogize things, is if you really look at the electric universe, it's like the ocean, right? There's no emptiness. It's all connected. There's living things throughout it. But what you start to notice is in between these oceans are these deep water currents. They're highways. So if you're, you could be a foot away from this highway underwater and not know that it's running. But the moment you step into it, you're flying through the ocean at unbelievable speeds. I think it was Finding Nemo, when they were hanging out with the turtles, and there's a Disney reference. Good God. That they're moving in between these, and when they want to get out of them, they get out of the stream. So, my kind of question to him was, is something like that possible with travel between galaxies? Because you wouldn't need to develop a faster than light drive. You would just need the ability, A, to see these filaments, and then B, is actually be able to get into them. And I guess you could kind of say it's almost like the trolleys, like in your major suburban cities that run off of the city, kind of same concept, that they're able to move along the grid because they're being powered by, that electric filament in between the galaxies. But that was one that I don't know if I fully understand it or comprehend it. I get it, but you could spend years studying the electric universe and all the theories behind it and stuff like that. And you're only going to scratch the surface. Hence, Michael's work and the team that he's assembled with the Sunfire Project. He's dedicating a lot to get into this electric universe theory and how it can impact us and what we know about the universe.
Yeah, I think because it flips everything on its head like that is why it's, not all that accepted into general, cosmology. But it's my opinion, and you mentioned before we got online that you're a big, space guy. And, we don't know everything. And so we're missing a lot of pieces. Saying hi to my wife. We're missing a lot of pieces. We've got dark energy and dark matter that we don't quite understand. And it's like we understand this very small percentage of the cosmos. And so it seems to me that there is a big piece that we're missing that could potentially be, electricity and plasma that's being used in a way that we didn't know. But I never thought about that before, about how we could use it potentially as for interstellar travel, or maybe even some beings already are, huh?
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny. You talk about, something like this, flipping the current narrative or current accepted fact on its head. Every time that we launch a new telescope, everything that we thought we knew is completely wrong. And you take James Webb, for example, is the theory from day one is Big Bang, Big Bang, Big Bang. And then we throw up the James Webb telescope and we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why do we have galaxies older than what we perceive to be the Big Bang, or moving at a different rapid speed? It's anytime we get a new instrument up, a new measuring device, anything really for that matter, our current narrative is just completely flipped upside down. And I think we need more people who are, and Michael's one of them, who are accepting to new possibilities and willing to say, hey, here's the new evidence that we found, and it completely contradicts everything that we've known, and being able to look at that evidence and, all right, we have to go back to the drawing board and think of something new. So.
Right. Yeah. And I feel the same way about ancient history, and we'll get into a little bit of that later because it's covered a lot on your guys' show. But first, I guess let's just talk about how, you did a bunch of different things at Bell's, HR, loss prevention, and then did Matt just call you one day and was like, "Hey, let's start a podcast"?
It wasn't. That's not far off from the exact thing that happened. It was an email on a Sunday afternoon. But yeah, Matt and I I'd done different things within Bell's. For example, coming out of COVID, we figured a way to utilize Teams to help us kind of do big town halls and things like that. And Matt sent an email and hey, this is what I want to explore, is developing out a podcast and things like that. And I was transparent with him, like I love YouTube. I watch car crash videos and soldiers coming home, because those are just you need a good cry every once in a while, right? So that was about the extent of what I knew in terms of podcasting. And then Matt, very transparently, he's like, well, I'll be a first-time host too, so we'll learn it together. And that's kind of been our journey is over the past couple of years is, hey, let's do this. Let's try it out. If it's not working, let's change it up. Let's also be receptive to people who have thoughts or feedback or ideas. And, we're not committed to, all right, this is how we've done it. This is how we're going to do it. We're never going to change. We're changing things all the time, trying out new things. Because what we've learned, especially in podcasting, and Megan and Dave, you can appreciate, is that nothing is static. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to change, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable in a new environment, trying something new. As you go through this, and there's no manual. There's no, you have all these videos.
No.
You have all these videos online, like, oh, follow this exact recipe. Well, if you do that, you're not being authentic, and that's something that Matt and I were. It was very important to us in the very beginning, and still is now, to be authentic in what we're doing.
Right. That's what I try to do as well, is just be my authentic self. And I like what you said about like not being static and improving and things like that. And even on a smaller level, I just moved my books down. So now you can see my books. And now I got my Sasquatch poster instead of my Jesse Wells poster. So I literally did that right before. So if those posters fall in the middle of this episode, we'll just leave. we'll just let it go. Okay. I've watched your guys' evolution from the first episode. It was with Ben, right? Ben Van Kerkwyk.
So Ben Van Kerkwyk was our very first guest, and it was we recorded that at a offsite kind of third-party studio, and then we recorded Ben's, and then a couple of weeks later, I think we were in studio with Christopher Dunn recording an episode.
Yeah. And you guys have done a bunch of different things, improving and adjusting the sets, thumbnails. I heard you say in the episode with Matt on Legacy that you're always looking at what other people do, and would that work for me? Would that work for us? And try it out, stuff. You ever steal anything from us?
I will tell you this, and it's something that, so I'm the type of person, anyone that I meet, I think you can learn a lesson from, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, hey, they're doing something that I want to incorporate into my life or adapt or whatever, or they're doing something that I don't want to do, so I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So I think you can learn from everybody. And one of the biggest things that I saw when you first started doing your channel is, I love the fact that you have the multiverse background in all of your episodes. And transparently, when we would do Zoom interviews on the Matt Beall Podcast, I actually go in and manually add the background. So I have yet to figure out how to upload, change all the background and everything. I just kind of do it in post. And every time I see one of your videos, I was like, this is triggered in my mind. I was like, I got to figure out how to do that. Because right now I'm doing it the hard way. I'm just manually adding in the photo
in the background. Yeah. Restream lets me just kind of put it there, and so we've done the same thing. Change in the logo over time and things like that. And we just got a new editor. Well, he's been with us about 3 months now, and he does our intros and stuff like that. And we stole that from you guys. That stole is the wrong word, but like you guys, do a little dramatic intro of some of the highlights of the episode at the beginning as a hook and stuff like that. And so But I could see your guys' learning curve. And it's been really fun to watch. And the production value is like super high. But when you first started this, you didn't know what you were doing, did you?
No. So when we first started, I was using iMovie, right? Because I had used that in my personal life a little bit and things like that. But when we started getting 2.5, 3.5 hour episodes, just here's a great example of not knowing what you're doing, right? So when you're in Final Cut Pro, you have your main timeline. And the way we record in all angles, and I'll go through and I'll pick the best possible angle that I can for that particular part of the conversation. I would go through and use my mouse to right click, lift up, bring back down, just all these. It's like 10 different steps just to do one thing. And then I learned keyboard shortcuts. So it's kind of little things like that you're never gonna, in the beginning, you have no idea it exists. You don't even know you need it. And then one day you just kind of come across it and you're like, okay, that's kind of revolutionary. It's game changing because it allows me to get through the episodes super duper quick. Kind of the intros. So Matt and I talked and he's like, we should start doing intros. And it was a completely new concept to me, those little teaser pieces. And we were really able to hone them over time. And to me, it's one of the most enjoyable aspects of the editing process is getting to create those trailers, because it's so much stuff packed into a minute and a half. And we're just kind of saying like, here's what we're going to talk about here, kind of the context of it and things like that. So over time, that intro piece of it has become easily the most exciting part of the process.
What if history isn't linear? What if civilizations rise and fall again and again? Discover the shocking truth in Deja Vu, Has Everything Already Been? By my friend Alexander Cheshkovich. Grab your copy now on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And subscribe to Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today so you don't miss a thing. We're working through a little bit of technical difficulties in this one, but we'll be fine. One of the things I learned doing this over time is, it doesn't always go perfect. And, you kind of have to just take it in stride and not over stress about it and just kind of recover. One of my biggest snafus, for lack of a better word, was we recorded an episode with one of my dang I don't want a hero or an idol or anything. Yeah, you tried to help me with this. That's right.
Yeah.
Robert Schock and Catherine Ulysses, and that the audio was screwed, and I thought I was going to be able to fix it post-production, and I was not able to. A bunch of people offered to help, including Ryan, and it just wasn't recoverable. But I wanted to ask Ryan, starting out and, through the process, have you guys had to learn the same thing? And could you tell us any things that happened that were just like out of your control that you had to recover from, like while recording the podcast?
Oh yeah, no. So I'll start off with so 2 examples. So Chris Dunn was our very first in-studio guest, and Megan, I'll send you some pictures afterwards, and you can kind of show them from when we first got started. But we had 2 chairs, we had microphones that were attached to cinder blocks covered up with some white cloth and things like that. Well, and this is back when I was still in the room when they were recording. Our rooms I'm in a separate room now. But I had my headphones on. I could hear Matt and Chris talking perfectly fine. And again, this is my first full, you're responsible for everything, video, audio, that sort of thing. So what I did is I put my headphones on, I hear them talk, and I'm like, all right, audio sounds great. Sounds nice and loud. Here we are, good to go. What I didn't know is that I had the audio on my headphones maxed as high as it could go. I didn't have it push up on the fader. So everything sounded good in my ears. I'm like, yeah, this is loud. This is nice. Like, we're good to go. Not realizing that it was, artificial amplification of the sound. And so right off the bat, very first episode that I did, that was the biggest learning curve, is that more often than not, like video, you can get around, you can do some magic tricks, video, fade in, fade out, all this other stuff. But the audio piece of it, man, if that's kind of not great, that's when you really start to run into it. So it was kind of right off the bat, that very first recording that we did, like, yeah, headphones down as low as they can go, or at a manageable, listening level, and make sure you pay attention to the faders. But again, I'm grateful for that opportunity because it taught me something and helped me grow.
Yeah. And Matt seems like a good leader. And like, and since you guys were both starting this together and kind of figuring it out together, how did Matt respond to that particular issue?
Wait, to be honest with you, there was no response. It was that accepting, hey, this is what happened. It's like, all right, how do we, and he would, hey, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? How do we, have checks and balances in place and things like that? There was no like explosion or freak out of everything. It's like, and that's kind of what we use on the podcast too, is just accepting, hey, this happened, whatever it is happened, and you get upset about it, you get angry about it. It's not going to change what happened. So you just kind of accept it, you learn from it, and then you go forward. And looks like Dave, I was boring Dave because he decided to jump off the screen.
Yeah.
There he is.
There. I don't know what's going on today, but we'll take it as it we'll take it in stride.
The perfect day with us talking about all this stuff.
Right, exactly. This doesn't normally happen, but
the three people on this call all have producer in their title, and we've got all these.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, you're supposed to be host.
Oh my gosh, let's change that really quick.
Oh, don't change it. No, it's kind of like people are like, oh, I got three producers on this, this episode. It should be well produced times 3.
Man.
Just kidding.
It should be updated. Hold on a second. I am changing it.
Don't change.
Oh, no. Oh, we're trying.
Sometimes that happens when Megan and I both sign in and we forget to change it.
Well, it's funny because when I went to go log on to the link this afternoon, it still said Matt Beall Podcast, because I think the only time that we've used this particular platform is with you guys, recording there in studio, but now obviously doing this from the house.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because I should always double check that. How did you guys score Ben Van Kerkwijk and then Chris Dunn back to back as your first guest? Those are pretty awesome first guests.
Yeah, so you talk to Matt and Ben and Graham Hancock and Chris Dunn. He had, especially Chris Dunn and Graham Hancock, he had read them, when he was in college and things like that. And then Matt had gotten interested in the ancient stone vase community, and that's how he was able to connect with Ben and then Chris Dunn, and they had done some travels together, started really analyzing some of these vases. And Ben was like, yeah, he's like, Matt was, hey, I want to start a podcast. Will you be my first guest? And Ben, being who Ben is, very, open, go with the flow type person. He's like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. And then, shortly thereafter, we were able to get Chris on. But this was, oh goodness, it was right when we first started. So, we didn't have the schedule that we have now. We're releasing them weekly, and we were just kind of looking for guests and whoever we could get to come on that was willing to come on. We'd schedule around it. So there'd be times where we'd, 2 and 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks in between episode releases, where now it's, we're dropping them every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah. And eventually get into that groove, right? It takes it into the routine of things. And then, I mean, I usually have like 2 or 3 in the bank, waiting to go. Are you guys like in a similar situation, or do you guys just focus on one at a time?
So it varies. There's times where we'll interview 2, 3 people a week, and then there's other times, that we don't interview anybody all week just because we were able to get them recorded and go through the editing process. But yeah, right now we focus on the weekly. I think it would be a lot to take them to 2 a week or anything like that, because look, it's just Matt and I. From the hosting to the editing to thumbnails to trailers, scheduling. We have Joe, who also helps out with like flights and stuff like that. She is the absolute best when it comes to help getting the guests here. But it was, and I've said this before, is that one of the things that I really enjoy as part of the Matt Beall podcast, and obviously working with Matt, is we're not transactional. And kind of what that means, you see a lot of podcasts, unfortunately, that are transactional, right? They're not really interested in what a person has to say. They're just wanting that person to say it on their podcast so they can get subscribers and likes and comments and things like that. And that's not Matt and I. Like we generally like to have a connection with our guests and learn as much as we can, and also give them a platform, give them a space in which they can communicate these ideas, whether it's meeting with aliens on a monthly basis that only they can see, remote viewing, or it's, like Michael Claridge and the Electric Universe. And so we like to connect with people and learn their story, give them the opportunity to kind of talk through it, ask any questions, that we have, and get the message out there, really.
Yeah, you can see that connection. I do think it shines through in the show, the connection you guys build through just curiosity about the person and about the subject. I think one of the things that I think you guys do that is particularly helpful in that is I got this from Cody. Shout out Cody of East 10 Outpost. He'll love a shout out here. But you guys bring the people down and you have dinner the night before, right?
Yes. Yeah. We try to, when and where we can. Obviously we know schedules and things like that. But yeah, so we'll go and have dinner with them the night before. We'll kind of get, just get comfortable, right? Because you got to think about it from their perspective, right? They're coming down here, they're in a new space, they're talking to people that they don't know. And just traveling in general can be very chaotic for people. So give them that opportunity to kind of, hey, let's, take everything else off the table. Let's just have a nice dinner conversation, kind of get to know you, get to know your backstory, start to, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? What kind of format? What do we want to hit? So on and so forth. And then that morning, I kind of one of the things that I do is I go pick them up from their hotel. So we don't send an Uber or some stranger. Okay. So I go and pick them up, and then that gives me the opportunity to build rapport with them, form a connection, and then also from a technological perspective of, hey, do we want to have we have the ability to pull up pictures. We have the ability to pull up videos, because look, there's some things like Michael Claridge, for example, that he's explaining that's highly complex, and he needs to be able to draw it out, literally and figuratively. And so we give, the ability for them to do that in studio, as part of the overall process of that guest experience.
Yeah, I always wondered, did you guys have I didn't realize it was just you, Matt, and then
Joe.
That was your name, Joe, that does the travel. I always assumed it was a whole team. But it's pretty impressive that it's just all of you guys. It's just you three, I mean, basically, and you taught yourself how to do all this. Would you walk us through the first couple weeks of starting the podcast? What was the conversation?
Well, it was an email on a Sunday afternoon from Matt that said, hey, I'm really exploring starting a podcast, kind of, what do you know? I don't know anything about podcasts. And he's like, neither do I. Let's do it. And it's really cool to be in an environment to where you feel empowered to self-learn. You feel empowered to go and learn new things. And, there's a lot of times where Matt's bringing stuff back to me and saying, hey, I saw this online. I think we should try it. And we try it. And if we like it, we'll keep going forward with it. And if it's not something, that we liked, we'll move away from it. But that's kind of the culture that we have within the Matt Beall Podcast and the Beall's Legacy Podcast is, don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be stagnant, right? Always keep developing, always keep learning. And that goes from, a tactical perspective, like actually physically doing the job, or you yourself as a person continually grow, continue to evolve, and just don't be stuck in your old ways. Don't be static.
Yeah, you mentioned the Legacy Podcast, and I want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's a really cool concept. As I was listening to your episode on there and a few others, perusing through a few others, I don't know if any other company does that, but it's a really cool opportunity for people in a large company, in a large corporation to tell their story and, share the culture of the company, which I think is one of the most important things about the success of the company. So would you tell us a little bit about producing that one and what that means to you?
Yeah. So, in addition to obviously the Matt Beall Podcast, I also do the Beall's Legacy Podcast. And, when we're talking about the Beall's Legacy Podcast, the guests that are on our channel range from employees of Beall's. So whether they're in buying or planning or marketing or HR, IT, we have board members that are on there. We've also had Guy Harvey has been on the podcast. So it's a wide scope of people that are involved in the retail side of the business, right? So if you also look at it, Beall's Legacy from, if you're inside the company, to your point, you're learning about who that individual it is, whether it's a senior leader, it's a different aspect of the business. You get the opportunity to see, into their world. What's their day-to-day like? What are the most important things for them? What are they focusing on? What's new down the road? But one of the biggest wins, transparently, of the Beall's Legacy Podcast is it gives you the opportunity, if you're a prospective employee, you're a vendor, you're any of those things outside the organization, that you get a peek inside, right? So, one of our guests was Lisa Sorella. And you got to put yourself in the position of, maybe I'm interviewing with Lisa for a position, or, maybe I am, going to work as part of her larger team, or I'm going to work within that merchandising world. You don't have to scour LinkedIn for reviews or anything like that. You can just go watch an interview. Wow, and same with our store managers in the field, right? If they're going in for an interview, they can go and look at, like Gil Vogler, our senior vice president of store operations, that he has an episode on there. So if you're going to be working for him within stores or anything like that, like, you get that peek into the culture. And to your point, Dave, no one else is doing it. So that just adds to the long list of things that Beall's is doing that nobody else is doing, and kind of leading the charge on that.
Yeah. And you mentioned, recruiting. Do you ever get high performing people who are like, hey, I like this culture, after seeing that, and then then end up working on it just based off working at the company based on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say it was the sole reason, but we've gotten feedback that people have, hey, I've had the opportunity to listen to interviews of these different leaders. I've had the opportunity to peek into the organization, and it's been shared that, like, hey, this is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons, why I'm willing to come on board and join your organization, because of that transparency that you're having at all levels with these legacy episodes that we're doing. And I think, we're almost number 50. Getting ready to release number 51
on
Beall's Legacy side. So it's, we release those every 2 weeks. So every other Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We like our 11 a.m. time slot.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit about before we get into the juicy stuff. Tell us a little bit about Matt as a leader and how that influences the company's culture and success and forward thinking and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, what you see in Matt Beall, the Matt Beall podcast and the Beall's Legacy podcast, like that's who Matt is. And, I talked earlier about creating the culture of empowerment. Is, being empowered to go out there and do your job, to learn new things, to be responsible for things, not to be micromanaged or on a daily basis like that. So kind of what I tell everybody is like, what you see in the episodes, that's who Matt is. And if you want to get a peek into how he, runs the organizations or how he thinks, that's kind of why we have that Beall's Legacy podcast is to give insight into that. Into the culture, into the organization, and the different leaders that we have on there.
Cool. I just want to make sure I highlighted that because I think it's a really cool element to what you guys do. And I hope that if anybody's interested in the company and are watching this, they can go check that out,
Yeah.
So formerly Limitless, you guys go everywhere: UFOs, ancient civilization, electric universe, MK Ultra, consciousness, giants, and that's right up my alley. My first question though is why the switch from Limitless to Matt Beall Podcast, and then let's get into some of that stuff.
Yeah. So, it's one of those, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's, part of always exploring new things, not staying static in what you're doing. And it was, as we continue to evolve, as we continue to grow, Matt just had the idea of what if we went to Matt Beall Podcast versus Matt Beall Limitless. And I thought about it for a little bit, but, shortly after thinking about it, maybe for an hour or two, I was like, 100%, let's do it. I'm on board. And if you look at, Danny Jones' podcast, for example.
Correct. Yeah.
It's concrete for a number of years. Concrete.
It was, yeah.
Yep. And then he evolved into, the Danny Jones podcast. So, from a branding perspective, it's easier if you have the host's name in the channel name: Joe Rogan, Julian Dory, Danny Jones, as I mentioned. So it gave us better recognition. And now we're kind of in a cool avenue that when you type in Matt Beall into Google, Matt Beall Podcast is the first thing that pops up. So that's kind of, why we made that change.
Maybe I should change it to the Dave Floyd podcast. Chat, people in the comments, let me know what you think. But I actually like the multiverse. It's kind of a all-encompassing thing.
I do too. It's cool.
Yeah, it's sort of a thing I created. So I behind me, I've got a bunch of, Robert Schoch and Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock, and I got into all this stuff 20 years ago or something. You mentioned Matt was into Graham and all that stuff. He read all that stuff in college. Was the idea of a lost ancient civilization like on your radar before you started the podcast?
No, absolutely not. And again, so I'm a naturally curious person, right? So I have on my iPhone, I have a little note in the note app. And if I see something that I don't know the answer to or want to learn more, I'll jot it down in there and go back and research it later. But when we did our episode with Ben Van Kerkwyk, and I was going in editing after the fact, he kept referring to the Serapeum or Serapeum, how you want to say it.
Potato.
For the life of me, I could not figure out how to. I was like, I don't even know what is he talking about? Like I'd never heard any of these things. And then same with Chris Dunn and then into others. So when it comes to ancient civilizations that I knew literally nothing about it. But again, I'm not one to ever turn down new info or something ridiculously interesting like ancient civilizations and stuff like that. So it's I got caught up quick. Still don't know everything. I don't think anybody does, even though they'll like to tell you otherwise. But it's been a cool aspect of the channel that we've explored and we'll continue to explore.
So with the guests, you've had a bunch of great guests on the topic. Was there any like guest or evidence that you guys were shown that convinced you or came close to convincing you that there was a lost ancient civilization, lost ice age civilization? Any particular guest that really resonated with you? We've already talked about Ben, but is there any others?
I'm also one of these people that nothing should ever be 0 or 100%, right? You should never go to the far extremes, right? So 99.9999 or 0.0001. There's always that possibility. But I think, I won't go through and name individual guests, but I think when you look at Graham Hancock, when you look at Randall Carlson, when you look at Danny Hillman, for example, and Ganang Padang, when you start to look at all of them equally, it becomes very transparent that we know nothing
right.
about our ancient past. And I think a lot of times, some in the mainstream, if you want to call them that, when they hear ancient advanced civilization, I think a lot of times they're latching onto that word advanced, right? So they're advanced. Yeah. So they had to have flying rocket cars and they had to have this and they had to have that. And it's like, they can be advanced for their time, right? Look at the pyramids that they created, the altars to their gods, or any number of things. Like, what they were capable of is astonishing, and that's what makes them advanced. It's not you can look back and say that's a highly advanced civilization that we don't know much about, and we transparently don't know what happened to them. That doesn't mean that they're flying around in space cars like it's freaking Jetsons, right? They're advanced for their time. But yeah, to your earlier point, it's like we talked about earlier. Every time we send up a satellite or a measuring device like the James Webb Telescope, we learn something new. I think it's the same concept with ancient civilizations.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's so much that we haven't dug up yet, or LiDAR'd or anything like that. So I really like how you said you can't go 0 or 100 on anything, and you never should, because then you're like owning that idea as your truth, and we just don't know what's true and what isn't. Up until 15 or so years ago, we didn't know that the Amazon jungle had an entire civilization in there, hidden under there. So it's a good place to be general and try not to lean too far in one direction or another. But if you had to save your own life by answering this question, was there a lot? Are these structures like, the Serapeum, the Dang Gunung Padang, the pyramids of Egypt? They don't seem to make sense in the time frame that we attribute them to. So if you had to say to save your life, would you say this stuff's older?
That's tough, right? Because when it comes to a lot of these structures is, I don't know, we're just going off somebody else's interpretation, right? So
sure.
we'll take Egypt, for example. What we consider ancient Egypt, that time frame, and I'm not going to get down into numerical specifics, but what we consider ancient Egypt, at that time, there were Egyptian scholars whose job it was to study ancient Egypt.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
It's not just us looking back at what we considered ancient. Some of these civilizations and some of these structures, the multitude of time in which they've existed is incomprehensible to humans. It really is. Because we look at things, especially here in the United States, right? most buildings, that I drive around town and see are 20 years old, 20, 25 years old. We're talking about something that's thousands upon thousands of years old. I don't think we're ever going to be able to truly appreciate or understand these structures, these artifacts, because we're not capable of doing that, because we cannot comprehend that magnitude of time in which they've existed. So
that's a great answer. And it's the whole Cleopatra's closer to us than the building of the pyramids idea, and the fact that we live 70 to 100 years, if we're lucky, and just wrapping your brain around 4,000 years is tough. So then you push that back even further and say, hey, we got a lost advanced civilization that existed 10,500 plus years ago. It's fun to fantasize about, but you're right. I totally agree. It's really impossible for us to truly comprehend all that stuff based on the evidence that we have. If you were to choose, because you've been diving into this for a couple of years now, if you were to choose a site that you learned about that you think is, the most unexplainable, what would you choose?
Oh, goodness. Of course you would ask me that. A site that's I don't know. That's gonna be super, super tough. Even though I've never been, Egypt, I think, the Giza Plateau, the Osiris, and things like that. Those structures, I find intriguing, because number one, I have always been in love with kind of the Middle Eastern culture, that their approach to people and life and things like that. But those, I don't know, just to know that at some point that is where civilization began,
right?
Is, in and around Iraq and things like that. So the other piece of it, when it comes to these ancient Egyptian pyramids and things like that, we don't think like that anymore, right? Everything is about being smaller and faster and mass produced. And then what's the word I'm looking for, where you build something knowing that it's going to break, because it's cheaper to replace it than it is to build it in a way so it doesn't break. I forget the name of it.
It takes less effort too.
Right. All of those things, that's just, as a society, as a civilization as a whole, we don't think like that anymore. So when we see these structures from the past, I think we try to look at them through the lenses we understand life today. And that's kind of the first mistake that we make with those.
Yeah, totally agree. And I do believe that it's impossible for us to put ourselves and our mind into the mind of an ancient Egyptian, unless you were a time traveling anthropologist who went to, because anthropologists typically, if they want to live with a culture and really get the understanding of it, they say it takes 20 years. So you'd have to time travel to ancient Egypt, live there for at least 20 years, and you'd still probably wouldn't understand all the inner workings of why they do what they do, and that kind of thing. Any plans to go to Egypt? It seems like the one that you're most interested in.
Yeah, not personal plans. I know, there was obviously talks of initially when they were doing the big void explorations and things like that, but it's more of a fluid timeline now. It's kind of funny. We were at Disney, as I mentioned earlier this week, and we were going on Spaceship Earth. It's in Epcot. But one of the things is you go through a little ancient Egyptian world, and I'm like, man, I should take a picture of this and tell everybody, I'm like, hey, I'm in Egypt. When in reality, I'm at Disney World. But yeah, no immediate plans, at least for me or my fiance, to go. And it's just kind of, be great to see those sites and put your hands on those things. Because again, I don't think we'll ever truly appreciate the structures in Egypt, anywhere else in the world that we're looking at could be connected to ancient civilizations. Because again, I don't think that we can. Here's kind of so we had on, of course, I'm going to blank on his name for a moment. Oh goodness. But either way, like he's from the UK, and we were talking about things like this, like so ancient structures, and especially we don't have the ability to perceive an extended period of time like that. And it even is, I think it's even worse in the United States, right? So you look at some of these places in Europe and it's like, oh, that pub over there, how old is that pub? Oh, it's like 400 or 500 years old. That's just not something that we can comprehend, even here in the States, something that's 400 or 500 years old, so you extrapolate that into a whole world civilization. I don't think we appreciate those structures being as old as they are, or being able to comprehend it.
Yeah, you are an analogy guy, and I like your analogies. That's a good one, because when my wife and I went to Scotland and the UK and stuff, like sometimes you're in these small towns and some of those buildings are a couple hundred years old, or the churches are, even the cobblestone streets like are like way older than me, way older than my house is gonna last, that kind of thing. And so I think you're right, Ryan. I think that modern people who still live in the old world might have a better grasp of what these time frames actually mean, but still they're still removed by hundreds, and if not thousands of years.
We can't. I don't think that we can concept. I don't think we can truly conceptualize the length of times. Like, so you look at like Randall Carlson's work, right?
Yeah.
When he's talking about some of these floodwaters, the immediate melting of the glaciers and things like that, you're talking about things that take 1,000 years, tens of thousands of years to happen. And we're all like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean it's 10,000 years? It's just something else that we can't. I said it before, it'd be the last time I say it, but I just don't think we can comprehend that amount of time that has existed between when these things were created and now. And I think our inability to conceptualize that also influences the fact of how they actually constructed it. Maybe it was advanced as for their time frame and what they were capable of. We can't, I think far too often we look back at these older civilizations and, oh, well, they're dumber than we are now because they don't have iPhones, they don't have spaceships or anything like that. When in reality, these people were more closely connected to the planet than we'll ever be right now. So again, advanced is open for interpretation. It just doesn't mean they're putting spaceships into low Earth orbit,
Plus, we don't even know how to work anything in our house or our iPhones or anything like that. So
I think this episode has been pretty evident that we don't know how to use technology.
Yeah, exactly. Man, it's really fun to think about. And I think that's why those guests really resonate. And Matt's curiosity in the subject is really shines through as well. Were you around doing the podcast when he got into the vase thing? And was that like exciting for you, getting the hands on all these vases and Matt getting involved with that?
Yeah. So that they kind of like started at the same time, that expansion into the vase piece. I recall the first time he handed, like, let me see one, let me handle one. And like, he's talking to me about it. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is a pretty rock. This is a nice shiny rock. This is so cool. And I'm like, how old is this? What's the date range on this thing? And he's like, oh, it's like, 2,500, 3,000 years. And before he could even finish that statement, I was like, there you go. Gave it right back to him. Because the initial thought, like when you hear something that old, it's almost like fear. Like, what?
Yes.
How did that thing exist for so long? Because again, we're conditioned to buy a new damn iPhone every year. So, something that's thousands of years old. I don't know. We can't comprehend it. We just can't.
It was so cool at Cosmic Summit that he gave everyone the opportunity to hold one, and I had the exact same reaction. I felt scared while I was holding this vase. Like I thought, because I'm a Butterfingers man, and so I'm holding this vase. It's heavy as shit. Brittany took my picture, and the thing was so heavy that it makes my like bicep look like jacked, like I'm doing bicep curls while I'm holding this thing. And I have a smile on my face, but you can also tell I'm like a little apprehensive, and I'm like, put it down nice and gently. Were you at Cosmic Summit? I don't even remember.
Yeah. So I was, Matt and I went, last year was our second year in a row. So we were just kind of attendees the first go around. And then the second, the second aspect of it, Matt brought up, we had the vase room and we were kind of operating out of there, giving people the opportunity to see those things in real life, to put their hands on them. Because again, I think it's truly remarkable. And Dave, you can attest to this firsthand. Like when you're holding those things, it's almost got like an energy, a buzz to it, a connection to the past. And we just dismiss them because they're rocks.
Yeah. I remember I met Matt and I met Crystal, Matt's wife, but I don't think we met at Cosmic Summit. Megan, did you meet Ryan there?
I think you might have handed me a vase. Like,
I probably did.
Saw my picture with Ryan. I made a bunch of stickers about the vases, gave him a stack of stickers, and then I think I worked my way down the table, and you actually, I believe you handed me a vase.
Yeah. We were, and Dave, I remember seeing you in passing. I think you were talking to Trevor Grossi at the time.
Okay. Oh, I was interviewing him on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to get a little exclusive Trevor Grossi interview on the floor, and he's a little bit elusive. So I'm glad I was able to grab him. Has he been on your guys' show, or is there any plans to? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Kind of. He was doing, I think, a UFO UAP conference up in Tampa. So like logistically and everything like that, we're able to work it out perfect.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy, and talk about passionate about this kind of stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah. He is very close to his heart. And again, he's one of those people, he's not doing it for transactions or likes or comments. Like he really wants to learn more. He really wants to understand more and educate people. And, that kind of shines through.
It does. And I find he doesn't even like the spotlight. Like he doesn't like the attention or anything like that. And that goes to show you like how he puts himself, outside of his comfort zone to do this sort of thing. And he's partially somewhat involved in the Void project, or no?
I don't believe that he is. I don't believe that he is. Yeah, but we kind of, Matt Stips, Information Architects, was able to kind of help with that. And that's, Matt said all that publicly, but I don't think, could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain Trevor isn't involved with this particular Big Void project.
Got it. And so when it comes to the Big Void project, like you're the producer of the podcast and stuff, but you must have some like a little bit of inside information. Any inside info for us?
Hopefully this would be the only time that I disappoint. But I have no inside knowledge, no anything like that. And, and again, Matt's very transparent. Like he doesn't hold or gatekeep anything. And, you check his X account or even some of our episodes, like he'll tell you, he's like, here's where we're at. And it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It just is. And this is what the plan is. So that's, again, it kind of adds to how Matt operates within the podcast. Is just like his channel is like, hey, here's what I know. This is what I've got. It's
cool how he's willing to, use his influence and resources to like, because I always thought like, man, if I was a CEO of a big company and I had the resources, I would put some of it into like answering some of these questions that everyone wants to do. And Matt's like the only guy like around that does that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So let me ask you then, because I'm not one of these people who is a Zahi Hawass hater. I appreciate Zahi Hawass for who he is and what he's done. What was he like, in person, meeting him and hanging out with him and stuff? Did you guys go out to dinner with him and whatnot? And
we did. And it was, look, he was nice to me. The people that he had with him were very nice. And, I have to appreciate Zahi for who he is, right?
Yeah.
So you got to look at it from his perspective of he's born and raised in Egypt, and his entire lifetime, his parents' entire lifetime, his grandparents, and going back, they have all grown up in the shadows of these pyramids. So that's all he's known since the beginning of his time and his family times. Those pyramids have existed, and there's things that we know about him, and then there's things that we don't. So I think knowing that he grew up in that environment and in the shadows of those pyramids, like, I get why he's so passionate about protecting them, protecting their heritage, protecting their lineage. And again, it's no longer his job, but it was his job at one point, is to not just let anybody run out there and start digging into things and start, cracking things open, trying to find an idea. He had to balance curiosity and the preservation of those sites. And again, I'm not going to speak to the entirety of his history just in the moment that I met him. But he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy to me. And it was a good episode, I thought.
Yeah, it was.
Interviewing him on that, we were grateful that he was able to bring photos, and we just didn't have to reference the book. But
right.
But yeah, it turned out really cool to have him on the channel.
I thought so. I thought it was one of my favorite episodes you guys did, because it gave him a little bit of a do-over as well, because he did Rogan right before, and he got a lot of I just don't think he's a little bit older. I don't think he really understands the podcast scene and how social media works and stuff like that. And, people were all over him after that Rogan episode. And it was really nice to see you guys give him a do-over and give him a second chance to sort of explain himself and expand. And Matt did a really good job of, handling that. Don't you think?
I do. And I think it was, it was a great opportunity for both of us. A little bit, obviously, different of a vibe, different type of environment.
Yeah.
Matt was very respectful of who Zahi was and his contributions to Egypt.
He was,
but also very hey, we've got these questions, or explain this to me. Where I think Joe Rogan kind of got the whole interview down a path that was different. When Rogan's like, well, tell me how the aliens built the pyramids. When Zahi Hawass is like, what?
Right.
We built the pyramids.
Right.
And Rogan's like, no, you didn't. Quit hiding the aliens. And it's like, what? Again, that's not excusing the overall interview, but it can kind of set the tone, the vibe, when you're getting pelted with questions like that.
Yeah, I actually felt bad for the guy, because he, even the whole it's in my book thing. Well, look, the guy just wrote a book, and he thinks he's coming on the Joe Rogan Experience to talk about his book, which is all the research and all the decades worth of findings and how they went about doing it and all that.
He was
stuff.
on a book tour. That was the thing. He was here in the States on a book tour. And that was one of the funniest things, is we all get introduced for dinner, and Zahi had a couple of guys with him, and I introduced myself. Their names elude me at the moment, but the first thing he asked, he's like, you're the producer? I'm like, yes. He's like, can we show pictures? And I'm like, please do. Because again, they had already kind of, they had learned about it's in my book, which it wasn't his book. He's on a book tour.
Yes.
So even when they came to record our episode, they came prepared with photos and different things like that. So Dr. Hawass could kind of talk through them as we went through the episode.
Yeah, I don't think they do any post-production inserts of pictures or anything like that. I've never seen them do that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And so with all the different subjects you guys cover, as I mentioned before, UFOs, ancient civilization, electric universe theory, like you've had guys talking about MK Ultra. One of my favorite episodes was the Cup 2 episodes about the Kurt Cobain thing, consciousness, giants, all kinds of different stuff. What is your favorite kind of topic to guest to have in like what do you like talking about and learning about the most through the show?
Anything space, aliens, solar system, like that's what really piques my interest, because obviously all the nerdy Star Wars stuff behind me and things like that. When I was growing up, it's just my mom was a big reader and kind of influenced me within that. So since I was a kid, with the exception of when I was in recruit training, I've always been reading books, and it's always been the sci-fi section, because to me, the universe, the solar system, there are so many possibilities of things that we can't even begin to dream of, that we don't even have the ability to think of and create, not necessarily build, but even think that's possible. It's literally and figuratively infinite. And that kind of infinity, it just, I don't know, it fascinates me and weirdly brings me comfort in the fact that it can be anything and everything that you want, is kind of how I view the solar system. Now, it'll make your head hurt when you really and truly, think about it. As I'm sitting in this chair, technically, I am staring upwards at the endless vastness of space, as I'm on a rock that is orbiting a sun that is simultaneously moving through the galaxy and orbiting around something even bigger. Like, I don't know, there's just a part of me, it's like, holy shit, that is cool. That is so cool. So I've always been the type to just kind of to look towards the sky and all aspects of it.
Yeah, you're like me. I do like the lost ancient civilization stuff, and we lean that way a lot of times, just because that's how things have played out with the show. But I'm the same way with space. That's always been my favorite topic, and the plan is to start getting more people on the show talking about astrophysics and things like that. The cosmos in general, quantum physics and how that works. I've been going down this quantum physics rabbit hole lately. And I really,
good for you. If you figure it out, let me know.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it seems like somehow our observation of matter creates reality, and that's how. And that's just philosophical, scientific philosophy, but that sort of thing like opens up my imagination much more than anything else. If you could have like a guest from sort of astronomy, astrophysics, like if you had your dream guest that you could bring on the show, who would you bring on?
That's tough. Because in all honesty, if I had one in particular, we'd already have an invite out for them.
Right.
Because Matt's really good about like, hey, there's, I've come to him with people and said, hey, I think we should have this person on. And he's like, let's do it. So that one would be, that one would be a little tough, but what I can on the spot, he's not necessarily a physicist. He's a scientist, but have you seen Project Hail Mary?
I don't think so. It kind of rings a bell.
You got to go. You've got it. Megan, have you seen it?
I'm looking.
Okay. Yeah. So it's guy's name's Andy Weir, and he used to work for NASA. He was a scientist. I don't know exactly what specialty or anything like that, but he became a writer. And he wrote a book called The Martian, which had Matt Damon in it as the movie and things like that.
Oh, wow.
Well, he just wrote one called Project Hail Mary, and he's got another one called Artemis, which isn't just transparently as good as the other two. But I don't know, he's a phenomenal writer in the fact of he can kind of tell a story that has extremely complex scientific, mathematical based scenarios, but also make you laugh, make you cry, and kind of things like that. So, it's such a tough question to answer in terms of like, who would be that all-star, but I think Andy Weir would be pretty cool to talk to.
No, I think that's a good answer. Is there a movie coming out with that? About
that?
Yeah,
it's out. Yeah, it's got Ryan Gosling in it.
Yeah,
is,
okay. Yes. No, have you seen it?
Oh yeah. No, fiance and I had, because I'd read The Martian and obviously saw the movie, and then I had heard he had a new book that came out called Project Hail Mary. So I read it, and it's one of those books that I won't give any spoilers out, but at the end of it, like, I was so genuinely sad, not because of how it ended, because my journey with those characters was over. And he had done such a phenomenal job in terms of world building that you really became attached to them. So look, I finished that book and started to, tear up and stuff like that. And then I had my fiance read it, and then she went through the same thing. And we've both been tracking for, oh goodness, probably 2-3 years now, maybe even longer, of like where this movie was in development. How are they doing it? And what I will say is, I am one of those people that's like, well, the book was better. Well, yeah, of course the book is better because it's in my head, not, an interpretation of somebody else's. But what I'll say is I love the book for the book, and I love the movie for the movie. I don't necessarily, love the movie because of the book, because I don't know. They did a really good job of creating both. But if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend to go see it as soon as you can, because it's a really cool movie. It's a really good movie.
I've been meaning to go see it, actually, and that's why I said I thought it rang a bell, and then when I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, that's that new Ryan Gosling movie.
Yeah.
I love science fiction books, science fiction movies. Typically, if there's a movie about like space or something, I'm in. I'm gonna go see it. And do you have a favorite science fiction movie, and if so, why?
Ooh, favorite science fiction movie. So I am probably going to be burned at the stake for saying this.
Okay.
I don't, given the background that you see, I don't put Star Wars and sci-fi. I think it's something completely different. It's a beautiful, I love it, but it's like, come on now. Like we're not accounting for time dilation. It's
fantasy.
It's fantasy. Yeah. It's not really,
I agree.
Sci-fi and things like that. If I had to say, of course, I'm being put on the spot again, and I can rattle off movies except for when it's like, when is your favorite? My top science fiction movie, probably has to be Alien and Aliens.
Okay. Yeah,
and
I love those.
And then that could easily bleed into Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
But I really liked the Alien movie because Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, and they're like, oh my gosh, they are nice people. And then what's his name just abandons his wife and kids to go yeet off into the solar system with some aliens. Like, I thought that was a little weird.
Yeah.
But everybody's like, oh my God, the aliens are nice. They're here to be our friend. And then Aliens is like, you want to bet? And it just kind of showed that negative aspect of it, of one of the potential negative aspects of alien life. But I'm a big fan of that. And then the other kind of, it didn't do that great in theaters, but did you ever see Life with Ryan Reynolds? And
yeah.
I really like that one because it kind of bleeds into my belief of, I can't even remember. I can't remember her name right now, but it's kind of convenient we're having this conversation about aliens now that they've started to release some of the files this afternoon.
I wanted to ask about that too.
Yeah. But I think for the longest time, we had this idea of alien life as, they got to have a spaceship. They've got to be able to do interstellar travel. They have to, defy gravity, so on and so forth. But also keep in mind, it can be a single-celled organism, not from this planet.
Right.
And that was one of the core themes behind that movie Life.
Yeah.
That they explored, and it obviously it didn't end well. And I think even in our own solar system, like Europa, one of the moons there has an ice crust and water bottom. There could be extraterrestrial life on that planet, because again, extraterrestrial just means it's not from this planet. So whether it's a civilization that's mastered faster than light travel or anything of that nature, or plasma, or it's a single-celled organism, it's still alien life. And I think we'll see more definitive proof of single-celled organisms than we will advanced alien creatures, so on and so forth. So
I agree. And it's this big difference between like Star Wars and that. You know what I mean? It sounds like you classify like a sci-fi as like, within the realms of scientific possibility, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's some of them, like I know they're the classics. Hyperion, I think, is one of them. I know that's sci-fi, or like the Foundation series. Like I try to get on it. I try to get into them, and it makes my head hurt. I got a book for you, Dave, that you would really appreciate. It's called The Forever War.
Okay. By
John Hadelman, and the guy who wrote it is an old Vietnam veteran. And what I won't give any spoilers away, but they find a wormhole right outside of Saturn, and they don't know where it goes. So they start getting all these scientists, and they basically train them to be military too, because you got to think it's written back in the Vietnam era. So it's, war was on the brain, but they send them through this wormhole, and they start encountering these alien beings, and they start fighting. But one of the big core premises of the book is time dilation. So the main protagonist, he goes through this wormhole, he goes and fights these aliens for, in his time, a couple of weeks. Well, when he comes back home, it's been 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And he kind of struggles with like, well, I haven't changed, but society, civilization, all of that have changed around me, and it kind of repeats itself. But Dave, the reason I said that you'd be a big fan of it, because I read that when I was getting out of the Marine Corps, and it kind of, it just gave me this perspective that, hey, it's, you go on deployments, things have changed, you necessarily haven't changed. And here's how you can kind of process that and comprehend that. But it's a really good book. Very, I don't know, it's written back in the 70s. So it's not young by any means, but it's one of those books that I will go back, and probably once every 2 years, I'll sit down and reread it and come away with a new perspective, just depending on what's been happening in the world in my life. But yeah, I'd highly recommend that.
Yeah, I appreciate that recommendation for me specifically, because when you go on deployment, you do feel a little bit of time dilation, don't you? Like everything's changed. You were overseas doing one thing for like a whole year, then you come back and your family's done a bunch of different things. People have gotten older in your family, like things have just changed. And I've never really thought about it that way, but it is like almost like a form of time dilation. That's wild.
And he does a good, like I said, he's an old Vietnam veteran, and that's how he kind of explained his it's kind of how he expressed his own journey of processing, deploying, and things like that. And wow. Yeah, you get so focused in on your day-to-day, and what you're doing is all encompassing. You know that better than anybody, Dave, that you kind of, you forget that you've been gone for 7-8 months, and you come back and people are like, oh yeah, no, Uncle Timmy died like 2 months ago. And you're like, what? Like, I didn't even know that. Yeah. So, but yeah, would definitely check that out.
Shout out Uncle Timmy. Speaking of time dilation, that's one of the core themes of Interstellar. Are you an Interstellar fan? Do you like Interstellar?
Oh yeah, Christopher Nolan. I mean, that was one of those movies that's just so absolutely unique. It, to me, look, everything's possible, right? It just got a little kooky to me when he's like, yeah, I'm going to go into this black hole. And I think I'll come out the other side. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like that was, Yeah, that was the only thing that got a little kooky for me, but it was an amazing concept, an amazing theory behind the movie, that is, and obviously masterfully done. If you like, going back to what I said earlier, if you liked Interstellar, you'll really like Project Hail Mary, because it's realistic is a loose term that I'm going to use. It's a little bit more plausible on the Project Hail Mary side than us sending a couple of people through a wormhole.
Yeah. One of the things about that movie that I just found it extremely emotional. Like I felt like emotional the entire time. And Hans Zimmer doing the score of any movie is always going to be a winner. And I go back to that soundtrack, and it brings me right back to the emotions of that. But there's a bunch of movies that he's done, like The Last Samurai, that's got a badass score that I listen to and whatnot. So having him on board, and Christopher Nolan, and it was just an excellent movie. It did get a little kooky there towards the end. But we're speaking of time dilation. He when he comes back, his daughter, he's young and his daughter's an old lady.
Oh yeah.
And time dilation is a real phenomenon. And so I'm a big Star Trek fan. And I love Star Trek, The Next Generation and stuff like that, but they don't really account for any of that when they're just scooting around the galaxy.
Yeah, neither does Star Wars. I tell you what's do you know, so going back to Interstellar, do you know about the clock ticking when they're on that big water planet? Have you heard the theory behind that?
No, I know the scene though.
Yeah, so go back and watch that scene, and in the background of them on that water planet, you hear tick, tick, tick. That ticking is, I'm fairly certain, it's an hour or a week going by on Earth. Like they specifically did the math, and with the ticking of the clock to show you, this is how time dilation works in real time. So you have to go back and check it out. That particular piece of it, but one of the more realistic shows in terms of science fiction, space travel, time dilation. Have you ever seen The Expanse?
No, it's a show.
Yeah, so it was a series of books. I think it was 20 some odd books, ridiculous amount of books, but it ended up being a TV show where they haven't figured out faster than light travel, but they did create something called the Epstein drive, which kind of in hindsight is a little creepy, but they do a really good job of this is how space travel would work as to our current means and capabilities. But yeah, Epstein drive probably should have, might want to rethink that one, I guess.
I just looked it up. It came out in 2015, so maybe they didn't have all the information at the time.
Oh, they did. They did.
You're giving me a bunch of shit this is making me happy because you're giving me a bunch of stuff to look into. I've been kind of off the sci-fi kick, because typically when I have time to watch shows, I'm watching with my wife, and we always have to kind of meet in the middle on what we like, and it always ends up being true crime type stuff or whatnot. But my wife's not interested in any of this shit. Is your wife? No, but you were able to get her to read Project Hail Mary?
Yeah. So it was she's like me. She's curious in the fact of being open into stuff like that, but she's read The Hunger Games.
My wife too.
I'm reading Sunrise on the Reaping now at her behest, because the movie's coming out and I know it's going to be super sad, as I've been told. But yeah, she is not nowhere near as interested or deep into the space and sci-fi as much as I am. She loves to hear me talk about it, which, obviously that's I love that. I appreciate that. But, if she has to go, she's not going to go do it on her own.
Right. Yeah. My wife will watch stuff with me. I found when we first got married, I'd watch whatever I wanted. And now we always end up meeting in the middle. But actually, I do enjoy that time we spend together. So it's all good. So let's talk a little bit about UFOs, UAP, Disclosure, that kind of thing. We got the Spielberg movie coming out. I think it's called Disclosure. Isn't
Disclosure,
it?
yeah.
Disclosure,
yeah.
Disclosure
right
Day
on the
or
nose.
something. Yeah, Disclosure Day.
Yeah, right on the nose. They're not even trying to hide it anymore.
So, this is just something I've been building in my mind for a long time. You mentioned, I think, was it the Forever War? You read that right after deployment, you said?
Yeah.
During deployment? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how, like, when you go on a deployment, something you consume like kind of sticks with you during that time because it's such an impactful time in your life. But I'd seen a lot of the X-Files on Sundays, would watch with my family or my friends. It'd be like The Simpsons and then Family Guy and then the X-Files would come on or whatever. But when I was in Iraq, I bought like these compressed DVDs that had like every single, I got it over there. But
I know what you're talking about.
Every single episode. We called those, I'm not even going to say, I don't know if it's a derogatory term.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it.
You know the word, you know what the word I'm talking about. But we bought it from one of those guys. And I watched every single episode, and then it, like, probably twice while I was in Iraq, and it became, sort of my favorite show. And I've been following science fiction and UFOs, the whole phenomenon since I was a kid. And I'm starting to get to this place, Ryan, where I think we're, through popular culture and media and shows like the X-Files, and you mentioned Close Encounters of the Third Kind, we're being slowly led in this direction of what disclosure is, or what they want us to think disclosure is. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we got all of a sudden all over the news, the scientists are disappearing, and then all of a sudden Trump is like, yeah, we're going to put out some more files and it's going to be disclosure. Then Spielberg is coming out with a movie, Disclosure Day. What is your take on what this modern UAP disclosure that we're experiencing is? Like, what is this in your opinion? I know it's a broad, big question and nobody really knows the answer, but what's happening right now? Is this disclosure?
So, yeah. I'm so glad you asked me this, because I think there's an assumption when we say disclosure. I think there's an assumption that it's disclosure of aliens and alien crafts, which can be partially true. What I firmly believe is that, yes, aliens are real. 100% aliens are real.
For sure.
Whether they're coming up from the water or they're visiting us from other spaces, they're 100% real. I think a large majority of the craft that is observed by other pilots, by military forces, whatever that might be, I think a large majority of those are ours. And I think it's technology that we've reverse engineered over the years. Hey, crashes happen. Some people have said they could be gifts, so on and so forth. I think that we've reversed engineered a large number of those craft to produce our own. Bob Lazar talks about this. If you look at it, it is easier for the government to say, oh, no, they're all aliens, than explaining that we've had 0-point energy, anti-gravity, all these different technologies. It's easier to blame aliens than it is to be transparent of the fact that we've had this technology and we've kept it hidden from you for any number of reasons. You're not responsible enough, so on and so forth. So
ontological shock.
Yep. Well, you got to think banks collapse, religions collapse. And I think the government knows way more and will never be transparent about anything. But again, I think a large portion of the craft that we see are of our own building and design that we could have, extrapolated off of crashed vehicles. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think they want people to know that it's our technology that we've had for, over half a decade. I think it's just easier to say, well, it's aliens. So, we don't know. They're doing their own thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I also, like, every time, like, it comes from the government, or even nowadays, even pop culture, like this Spielberg movie coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I always have to check myself for my I want to believe, because I think, like you said, they're telling us, what they want us to know.
Yep.
And that's all been on purpose, likely for 70 plus years, and it doesn't, it's not a coincidence that Spielberg has been involved in a lot of these movies either. I don't think, but so what about the crafts that we see? You said a lot of them you think we've reverse engineered, and we've got whistleblowers coming out and saying literally that there's a dozen or more of them, these crafts. Some of them have crashed here recently, like within the last 100 years. Some of them they found at archaeological sites, which blows my mind, right? And they're reverse engineering these. I can wrap my brain around that, but there's this phenomenon of like these orbs that people call and people see all the time. And I know people that I don't think are off their rocker. And they see these orbs, and so what do you think like the orbs are? Do you think,
So again, I go back to my earlier statement of why I'm so interested in sci-fi and space and things like that, because it's unlimited possibilities, and it wasn't Diana Pasquale. It was someone else. The Snake Brothers actually were the ones that recommended this book when they appeared on the channel. But there's a strong belief that when you look back at the course of human history, fairies, goblins, any supernatural creatures you want to wrap your head around, that was in fact non-human entities. And they chose that particular form so that it wouldn't create that, to your point, that ontological shock of another being. So the orbs piece of it, is it energy? Probably. Is it an alien life form? Probably. Could be. I don't necessarily have it's got to be aliens, it's got to be human. I don't think we know what it is. I think we're pretty confident that it's not something of our own creation, and it could be interdimensional aliens. It could be plasma. It could be a plane flying low with its lights on and not an orb at all, right? So it's this whole, I think it's just this an endless possibility of things of what it could be. And then I was actually, as I was getting ready for this afternoon, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Are you familiar with the uncanny valley? You heard that term?
Oh,
before?
yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, would you explain it for Megan? Because she was shaking her head no.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't. You're down in the bottom left, Megan. So I was like, I didn't even see. So they call it the uncanny valley, to where, and I'm not going to get the graph, you have a picture of it, even better. But there's this dip in terms of a human's ability to see something and be like, that's not real.
Right.
And then it's not. And then there's this dip and it's like, okay, that's a human, that's not real. But there's this little valley area to where you see it and you're like, is that a human? Is that real? So you see a lot of these things like faces out in nature, right? Where it's like piping, on a building that kind of gives the appearance of a face. Does that make sense, Megan?
Yeah, pareidolia, sort of.
Yeah, there you go. So what I was kind of researching is where they believe that was, some people believe that was that uncanny valley pareidolia was born out of, is at some point humans had the ability that if they saw a face, to know and be fearful that it was not human, it was something else. So kind of how over time humans are just not, some crazy people aren't, but where we're naturally fearful of snakes, like that's evolution over time. We know to stay away from snakes because they're angry ropes and they can hurt you. I think when you see some of these faces within that uncanny valley, there's a part of in your body, in your genes, to be fearful, because at some point humans interacted with things that appeared to be human that were anything but. And I find that just so fascinating. Like, what the hell could it be? Because it was something that was a predator to us, or had we always had a negative interaction with them that mimicked being human that wasn't. And I just that is like, holy shit, that's kind of scary,
Yeah, it is. And there's certain movies that are animated in a way. There's a Tom Hanks one that I can't think of the name of right now. But it's like animated, but also it's still him acting in it. And it gives you that, like, it made me feel very unsettled the whole time, because it was like, it looked real, but it wasn't quite real.
Yeah.
He looked human, but he wasn't quite. And that's sort of what you're talking about with the uncanny valley thing. And it's an interesting concept to think that that's like in the analogy with the, being afraid of snakes, seeing something that looks human, but not quite, or looks real, but not quite. We have this innate feeling to be either fearful or apprehensive of. Yes. And that's what we experience. That's what a lot of people experience with UFOs, UAPs. Some people with the orbs and stuff, they feel like they're communicating with them in sort of a loving way, in an open way. But I don't know, man. I've never seen anything. Have you seen a UFO or a UAP or anything like that? Matt has.
Yeah, Matt has. I haven't, seen anything to the level, that other people have. The closest thing that I saw that it wasn't immediately explainable to me was we went and did orb watching with Chris Bledsoe.
Yeah, I did that too.
And look, Matt, Chris, and I, we all saw a set of lights that were moving in a triangular formation that, satellites don't travel in that method. Nothing man-made is gonna, or man put into orbit by man is gonna, exist in a pattern like that. And then there was another instance where I kind of saw a corkscrew star moving in a corkscrew fashion, and just it was unexplainable. But I am not fortunate to have seen a giant football field size aircraft, or as the Mario Woods so beautifully and eloquently puts it, it was about the size of a super Walmart hanging out over one of our silos. And that's and Megan, that's that's how we measure things here in America is, how many super Walmarts is it? How many washers and dryers in it?
How many football fields?
Right. Yeah. We refuse to use kilometers or miles or anything like that. So
we use the amount of time it takes you to drive from one place to another, which apparently isn't common in the rest of the world.
Yeah. I noticed Canadians are always fixed on how far it is how far do they have to drive?
Yeah. Is it an hour away? Is it 15 minutes away? Yeah.
There's so many different, what I would consider credible cases of UFOs, UAPs, like the Fire in the Sky guy, Travis Walton. There's the Phoenix Lights. There's that school in Africa where all the kids saw.
Oh goodness, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but people know what I'm talking about.
Aerial school.
Yeah. Is there any like particular? For me, it's the Phoenix Lights. But is there any? Just because so many people saw it and it was so big, it was like people saw it all over the city. It wasn't like it wasn't a mass hallucination. I can tell you that.
Right.
But is there any like story or anything like that that you particularly find credible or are interested in?
Not a particular story. I think what I always find interesting is the people that try to explain it away. So to your point, like it was a mass hypnosis, and it's like, okay, like that would
still be terrifying.
Right. Yeah. But there's not one particular instance where I'm like, that settles it for me. what I believe is people, right? I believe,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is what I experienced. This is what it felt like. And look, here's, Mario Woods. If you go back and watch his episode, Dave, I know you can appreciate this, having worked in the realm of PTSD, is as Mario's describing that event, you saw his mind leave that room.
Mm-hmm.
And went back to that event and was he was not in the podcast studio. He was not having a conversation with us. He was back and reliving that event.
Yeah.
And I just, after, watched it happen in real time and going back and listening to it after the fact, I was like, that's how he's not full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't, that's people would try to mimic that and pretend. He was not pretending. Like he was gone behind the eyes. He was back reliving that event. And, who am I to say that, like, well, that didn't really happen to you. It's just psychosis. It's like that man went through something quite terrifying and very vivid in his memory. And I think it's really fascinating too, especially with Mario, that like, as he continues to tell the story, he learns new things. He learns different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's not one that, one instance or one aspect that's like, boom, that's what sold it for me. I think it's the phenomena as a whole is, goes back to my earlier point too. Like, I think some of it's government, and I think the government's got the technology, and I think, one of their biggest assets is disinformation. So
yes.
I think they take this, I think they intentionally leave info for people to stumble across within the government to push that info out for them, where the people don't know they're disinformation agents because they're believing the information that they got is real. And you see the government do that in every aspect of how they operate. So I always go back to the experiencers, right? The Mario Woods, your Jeff Nucitellis, and Matt's talked about this openly on the channel too, so I can as well. As we're actually, looking for Matt Beall Podcast, we're actually looking at having kind of some quick conversations with people who've actually experienced an event. So not necessarily, a full long podcast interview. It's like, hey, tell us about the experience that you went through. What did you see? What did it feel like? What was the scenario and things like that? Because as a society, as a culture, I think the only way that we're going to continue to evolve people forward and being accepting of life from other planets is to share stories of people who've experienced things. And Mario Woods, Jeff Nucitelli are two prime examples of just normal, average guys who went through quite possibly the most terrifying experience possible by not only encountering aliens, but getting firsthand observation and witness of their technology. It's cool as hell.
Yeah, it's like similar to Bob Lazar as well as Travis Walton. For Travis, it was a traumatic experience as well. And you're right. When you're telling the story, it's like, like I did a lot of therapy, still do for, my deployments. But you learn more about the experience when you take yourself back there. You learn things that you forgot and things like that. And so that was a really good episode because you saw it firsthand. You mentioned disinformation and the fact that people, may think that they have some truth that they're sharing. And it makes me think of this Tim Burchett situation. Have you been following that? Did you watch him on Rogan? I watched about half the Rogan episode. I believe Tim to be a truthful person, but I question the information that he thinks he knows. Does that make sense?
It does. I know the episode's out there. We haven't had the opportunity. I haven't had the opportunity to watch it. Way back early on in the beginning, we did a Zoom interview with him on the channel. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was very long time ago. But one of the things he talked about as an example was the Manhattan Project and compartmentalization.
Yes.
So within the Manhattan Project, you had people, and they talked about it in the movie with Christopher Nolan. Like you had this section over here working on this section over here working on this. That's what I think the UAP, UFO kind of approach is now to the government. I don't think that there is one person that knows everything.
Exactly.
I think they know within their realms of responsibility. I don't think it's just the government. I think it's major defense contractors. You have to farm that stuff out, right? You have to farm that out for them to work on it. But and this is just especially the U.S. government has an amazing history of just not telling the truth.
No way.
Yeah. Even to its own people, even to the people that are, top secret Yankee white. Right. I think is I think that they're intentionally planting disinformation for these people to parrot or come across and not say anything. And it's, I used to work for this guy a long time ago, but he would tell different things to different people. And he'd be like, hey, this, that, and the other, but don't say anything to anybody. And he'd go to another person and he'd be like, this, that, and the other, don't say anything to anybody. And then he would intentionally wait to see if any of those confidential things that he had told them had gotten back.
Yeah.
And since he all told him something different, he knows exactly who leaked. And I think that the government will do that and say like, hey, here's a nice juicy piece of UFO. Don't tell anybody. And what's the first thing that they do is they go run out and they say something. And the government's like, well, that's false. Why would you? Here's all the evidence refuting that. So I think that they push disinformation so intently, so heavily to just keep the waters murky and muddy, and no one will ever get the truth, regardless of what your position is within the government, with what your responsibility is.
Sorry. Yeah. So you got a handful of things going on here. Compartmentalization plus disinformation is intentionally keeps the waters muddy, intentionally makes it so that no one has, the full truth about it. And I think about that when I consider people like David Grush, Lou Elizondo, David Fravor, Ryan Graves. I think these people, Lou is, I won't say that, but when it comes to Grush, Fravor, Ryan Graves, these are all, military guys that were not too far off from like the rank you and I were in the military. They weren't like super high,
every day.
Yeah, everyday guys. And Ryan Graves and the crew down there in San Diego, they're just pilots. Pilots are not like at the top end of like the information pyramid, and they're seeing this stuff. And but how do you feel about those whistleblowers in this era of like, now there's whistleblower protection, so now some people can come out and say stuff under certain circumstances, then it gets pushed behind into something called a skiff, and then certain people on the committee can go learn it, and then they decide what it is that they want to share with us. And so then these guys are being grilled by Congress, and they're saying they're allowed to say some stuff and they're allowed to not say something. Do you find that frustrating, or do you think we're getting somewhere?
No, I don't find it frustrating at all, because it's part of the game, right? Yeah. They have all these it's frustrating because so the Tic Tac incident, right? Mm-hmm. That could easily have been a defense contractor putting on a show, and let's test this craft out. And we already know that it flies. We already know it can do all this cool shit. Like, that's not where we're testing it. Let's see what happens when our military experiences it. And it wasn't to let's test out our tracking. Let's test out, the radar capabilities. I think it was, let's put it in front of people and see how they react. Because it goes back to that larger aspect of it is the government wants you to believe it's aliens 100% of the time. They do not want you thinking or knowing that some of this technology belongs to us, is born from us. Because again, if it got out that we have 0 point energy and we've had 0 point energy for decades, what the hell? Why did you and I go to Iraq so Halliburton can build oil wells? Right? Imagine if something like that got out. That's why I think they want you to think it's aliens, because they want you to think the government is incompetent and incapable of doing things to this magnitude and things to this level.
Yeah, and I like the idea of soft testing ontological shock. So let's show it to these pilots, and then let's give these pilots permission to tell everyone, and then let's see how everyone reacts. And then also, I think it's a great point that they want us to think that they can't do that. But they can. You guys had Ashton Forbes on, and he's a wild man, and he's dead set on, you know, that we have this 0 point energy. We can do all this different stuff. What was he like? I met him at Cosmic Summit. He's a very like chill person when you meet him in real life, but when he's doing his show, he is on fire, man.
He's very passionate, and what I think some of Ashton's research is, you know, I think he experiences kind of the same things that I do, in the fact of it's aliens. It's got to be aliens. It's not from this planet. It's angels. It's demons. When he's uncovering documents that like, no, it's us.
Right.
They're hiding this technology. They're lying to you. Like uncovering something like that. Like I get, you know, like I get a little frustrated too if people aren't seeing within it, but you should connect with him. He always makes for a good guest. Always got something going on.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. He's a bit elusive too. I don't know if I've actually reached out to him, but
you should try. Hey, worst he can say is no, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've taken big swings trying to get guests, and it's worked out in my favor. Like Matt, for example. Matt's like, hey, yeah, you're a nice guy. I'll that's one of the things I like about Matt is, you know, willing to do my show. Also, like just willing to give a guy like Cody a chance and bring Cody down. Yeah. Cody's a great guy.
Cody was like one of our, and I tried to go and look it up. I haven't in a while, but I think he was like one of our first 10 subscribers or something like that.
Yeah,
so he's OG as it comes. And hey, look, you know, I learned something, Matt learned something with Cody on. So I think it kind of goes back to who we are of like, hey, we want to have conversations, expand knowledge, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, have you seen his finally he got it done, his first episode? It's actually pretty good. It's very well done.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. He sent it to me Monday while we were on vacation. So it's kind of on my to-do list, besides getting caught up with the boys, is to check that out. So I actually might do that tonight. So we'll have to see. But Cody's again another one of those people that's passionate, and you see it come through in his work.
You do. And it's about 32 minutes, and it's actually very well done. And you can just see you can see his passion. The production's really good. One of the things I wanted to ask, since you're a veteran, is there any interest in the future of the show? You know, having more veterans and veteran stories on the show. Some of the veterans who have just to talk about their experiences, you know, overseas and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak for Matt on that. You know, it's kind of weird. We like a lot of our guests have had prior military background, like Ron Mallett.
Yeah,
he was one that had a great background. Not Andrew Collins, Mike Collins, Wandering Wolf.
Yes,
he's a veteran in the Army and stuff like that. I don't know. You know, it all depends on kind of what the content of the story is and things like that. But you know, it's not something we've shied away from or intently pursued. And if it works out, you know, we have a great guest on, we'll have that kind of conversation with him. Sorry Saw a dog running around outside.
No worries. I think we'll get close to wrapping up here. Looking ahead for the show, what you got any like teasers for upcoming guests or anything like that you're allowed to share, or directions of the show that that you guys are thinking about taking?
Upcoming guests, we're getting ready to do we've got our first debate coming up. Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. I think that's going to be big.
Who is it again?
Dan Richards and Neil Sinlak.
Oh, right. Yeah. That is going to be interesting.
That'll be a really good one. We've got a couple of astrophysicists that have actually, I kind of peeked out at my phone earlier, and Joe's, working on securing guests and stuff like that. I think as it stands right now, we've got guests all the way out until August. So to release every week out until August. So it's been fun. And then, like I said earlier, some of the experiencer conversations that we're going to look to have, I think those are going to be really cool, because it's not, it's not some government official. It's not someone who's been in the game for 30 years. It's like, hey, this is,
this is a real person telling a story.
Right. Yeah. It's experience that I've had. This is how I felt. This is what I know now, so on and so forth. So what about you? Are you, I guess for the same conversation or question you asked me about the veteran side into it, have you, entertained any possibility exploring into that?
Well, my first ever guest was my friend Jason Bush. He was a Marine like you, and he was, a tip of the spear guy in Iraq. And
wait, what was his name?
Jason Bush.
Did he have like kind of short hair, tattoos, and wore like a tan uniform?
He's got a big bushy beard. He's got short hair and a big bushy beard. But no, you're just making a joke.
Yeah, no, that bombed.
But no, I get it. But some of the stories, that he told, that's why I asked about it, because I thought about that. It was my intention when we first started the show was to have more veterans and veteran experiences and stuff, because he shared some really cool just insights into, what a deployment like that was like, where, you might go 3-4 weeks without taking a shower, and then he tells this story about how they got access to showers, but they were open showers. So they're all just standing there showering out in the open, and it's like the best shower ever. And then all of a sudden a convoy drives by, and it's a bunch of other Marines going woo and whistling at them and stuff like that. And then somebody takes his picture, and he said there's some Marine out there with a picture of his junk while he's taking a shower, and he's just waving it around for them and stuff like that. And veteran culture, especially within the combat arms and stuff, is like a totally unique culture that most people don't quite understand. Like if you, because you think like you're showering in the open and a bunch of people drive by, you'd think you'd cover up, but a classic Marine would shake it around for the guys, right? Just because
you gotta give them their money's worth, man.
Exactly. So that's always a direction I wanted to go with the show. It just kind of started happening, with the Lost Ancient Civilization stuff.
Yeah.
We just, especially with when we got connected with George Howard, and then we started helping promote the Cosmic Summit, and then we went to the Cosmic Summit, and then that gave us a whole bunch of connections. That's where I met Megan. It just gave us a whole bunch of connections into that world. So we kind of went in that direction. But I have no, I'll talk to anyone really with an interesting story, an interesting, an authentic story. You mentioned the debate. I really hope that goes well, because I think I think that'll be a great thing for people to see, versus these people just arguing online and calling each other dickheads and stuff. Because when you bring people together with opposing ideas, it humanizes them for each other. And I think Matt's sort of the perfect person to, calmly, you know, control, you know, the situation in the discussion. And so if that goes well, then it could be like something you guys do more regularly to sort of not settle these debates, but give people a humanized look at what, you know, each person is presenting and why they think the way they think versus like, you know, just making videos about like, you know, that Professor Dave guy, you know, making videos about people being, you know, an asshole or whatever. And so I'm really excited for that. Well, whose idea was that? Was that Matt's idea?
I think so. I think it was born on a just kind of out of an X conversation. And excuse me, what'll be interesting is it's going to require presence, right?
Yes.
You know, a lot of times online you can comment and you can run, you get distracted by something else, and or already have a narrative build up in your head, and that's what you're going to reply back with. So, you know, I hesitate to even call it a debate. I think it's just a discussion. You know, debate is just a term we'll use. I think it'll be a good discussion from two individuals who are extremely passionate about what they believe and what they think, and are articulate and smart. And I think that's what the takeaway is going to be, is two people from kind of opposing viewpoints, if you will, having a conversation. And I think you're right. Matt's going to do a phenomenal job in terms of moderating that, if you want to follow the debate pathway, or just facilitating that conversation. But either way, it's going to be good.
I'm excited. I'm also excited because I think I'm going to take the wife to Project Hail Mary this weekend, because stuff doesn't stay in theaters as long as it used to, and I don't know how long that's been out, but I need to get in there to see it. That's one you got to see in theater.
It is. Well, and it's to nerd out on that. Like, so it was done by Prime Video, MGM. So Prime owns, or Amazon owns MGM now. They actually extended the theatrical release for it because so many people were watching it. It's like I said, it's a freaking. You'll have to email me, text me, or whatever after you get done checking it out to let me know what you think. But it's definitely worth it.
I will. And are you going to be like on the first day for Disclosure Day, Spielberg's Disclosure Day?
You know, I probably yes, because I do want to go. I really do want to go and see it. I heard this the other day that the entire third act of that movie has not been shared.
Yes,
so
I heard that too.
All the trailers that you've seen and will continue to see are part of Act 1 and Act 2. And obviously, you know, if you follow filmmaking, Act 3 is the closer, is the hook, it's the hammer. So what's in that third act? And I've seen people dissect the previews, and look, Steven Spielberg is an amazing director, filmographer, all of that. The movie's going to be kick-ass.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Will people accept it and go along with it? I don't know, but I will definitely be watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind before I go and see it. But yeah, we'll probably go see it the first weekend it's out.
Do you think it's that's some of the speculation, but do you think it's a continuation / sequel of Close Encounters, or is it supposed to be?
I don't know. I think there's a possibility that he could have Richard Dreyfuss pop up somewhere in it. But I don't know yet. I hope it's not. I hope it's because our thoughts of aliens and UAPs and UFOs has evolved so heavily since Close Encounters of the Third Kind that I think if you try to do a sequel, it would come off just too campy and weird. But who knows? He's done some wild stuff in his time, and you know it's going to be a hell of a good detail-oriented movie when it comes out.
Well, I'm going to order Forever War as soon as we get off here, because I'll definitely read that. And the wife is working tonight. I just waved bye to her. She came home quick and then left again. So I'm going to watch The Expanse on Prime Video tonight as well.
Yeah,
check
it's a good one. It's a good one.
So I appreciate the discussion. We went all over the place, but I draw a lot of inspiration from your guys' show and what you guys do, and
cool.
Matt and what Matt does and how he hosts. I'm a different person. I'm not trying to be like Matt exactly, but I think he's doing an outstanding job, and so are you guys. And I really appreciate, both of your guys' support of my show. So I just want to say thank you for that. Megan, do you have any final words for Ryan?
Also, a big, huge thank you. Like your interview of Danny Hillman truly influenced the trajectory of my life, which is kind of a big statement. But I'm sure I'm not the only one who's seen an interview you guys have done and it's like shifted something in them. But that really gave me the confidence to reach out to Danny and start working with him, and led to all sorts of incredible adventures I'm still going down. So
did you know that, Ryan? That interview? Yeah. No, I didn't know that either. I didn't know it was that interview that got her into that, but she spent a bunch of time at Gunung Padang because of that.
Well, I'd already gone and been there, and I was already interested, but I had so many questions that were unanswered, and your interview with him answered so many of those questions for me and got me so excited. And to learn that they only hadn't gotten into the chambers because of funding and all sorts of other information about the site, it just really sparked me to want to directly get involved and and then I met with Danny and I was like, I'm in, like, put me in. How can I help? And
that's awesome. Hell yeah.
It's led to a fabulous friendship and a lot of adventures and many to come. So thank you.
Very cool. Hell yeah. No, thank you.
Danny's a great guy too. We get to party with him a little bit at Cosmic Summit. So I won't say much more than that, but it was I think it was my favorite part of Cosmic Summit was the couple moments I had with Danny at the end of the first full day. Ryan Barthel, thank you so much for joining the Multiverse, man. We really appreciate it. Me on. And hopefully we can talk again soon. Hopefully this is the first maybe some other time. You got to come on Breaking Ancient News. Has Cody been bugging you about that?
So yes, it's so funny. You guys must have coordinated and heard I was on vacation, because he sent me a message and was like, "Hey, can you get on this Sunday?" And I'm like, we're already gonna be at the park and everything. But I told him, just like I'll tell you, like, hey, hit me up. Weekends are obviously always better because it's, I'm not focused on the Matt Beall podcast side, but I definitely told Cody, I was like, let's get it going, let's get it together.
Cool. We usually do about an hour and a half on Sundays. Pretty chill. So we'll get you on there one of these days.
Oh yeah, very cool.
All right, man. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.
All right, later.
What's up, humans? If you're enjoying this content, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Megan and I are very grateful for all of your support, so thanks for joining the Multiverse.